My name is Barbara Villarts, and I've been trying to coordinate together with other colleagues that I would like to also credit, Simon Langen and Yoshihide Wada, this important project where most of the tools that we will be presenting today have been in the framework of this project. They have been developed. So as it was said, this is a partnership between IIASA, Jeff and UNIDO that started 4 years ago, and with a very clear objective. And it was about developing tools and capacities so that this can support the management of water, energy, land nexus, both at global scale and also at regional scale, with a specific focus on transboundary basins. So, these days we are very busy trying to navigate the current crisis that we have, the COVID-19. But not so long ago, we were already, busy, and we should continue to be working intensively on the many other crises that are flying probably over us, and they are significantly larger in a way and complex. And many of these, at the end, they can be framed under a broader sustainability crisis, that we are confronted with. So the way out and the pathway to get out of these big challenges that we have ahead is not simple, on the one hand, because we are talking about very complex problems involving many actors, many sectors, countries with feedback loops and so on. So it's not easy, the job that we have ahead of us. Also, it requires many different type of knowledge, and some people might have certain good understanding about certain parts of the system, but not necessarily about the entire system. And there is this need to create these integrated views and systemic views. And last but not least, the uncertainty. I don't think that we need to explain these days what this means, because we are fully living in an uncertain, permanent uncertainty. So the way to try to solve this increasing complexity, uncertainty, and try to develop these systemic views is actually now calling for more than 2 decades into the development of integrated approaches. And I guess many of you, if not all, have already heard quite a lot about this concept or this approach called water-food-energy nexus, which actually 10 years ago is especially calling for promoting a more integrated approach in the management of these 3 sectors. And the reason being specifically because there has been many efforts going on a sectoral level into the water sector, the energy sector, and the land sector to try to make those resources available and to try to produce and use them sustainably. But many of this funding and many of these policy efforts have probably not delivered all the impacts that were expected. And one reason is that there is a close interlinkages between all these sectors that has been for a long time overlooked. And now we are increasingly realizing the need for doing this integrated and joint planning. So 2 important things about this nexus approach. I think it's very important to bear in mind that this is very context dependent. So different regions might face different challenges, and solutions, of course, need to be addressed based on the specificities of each region. And the second thing, and also very important, is that these relationships and these interlinkages are dynamic, and they are very much driven by a number of boundary conditions that relate and connect to the economic development model or other drivers such as climate change, or even inclusively global geopolitics. So in this attempt to try to develop these approaches to manage these resources in a more integrated manner, as Lina was also mentioning, there is an additional challenge from the science perspective, the scientific perspective. There is a lot of effort going on in trying to develop suitable approaches, but we still have to bridge an important gap, is that to make that information also useful and fit for purpose for decision makers. And there are many barriers on both sides that make sometimes these science to policy that we often talk about it quite complex. And this was also at the core of our project, try to do tools which are fit for purpose and that can inform future policies. In our attempt, there was quite a few of us trying to do this. You will judge whether later if we accomplish or not the mission, but it was a large team of 26 persons as part of the ISWEL team, many from IIASA, but also we had the privilege to have a steering committee composed by well-renowned scientists and practitioners from the different sectors. And last but not least, this is also at the core of the project. We have been engaging and collaborating very closely with a large number of stakeholders, both in the Indus and Zambezi, both research organizations as well as government and non-government decision makers. So I would like just to very quickly give you a tour on the type of tools that we are going to discuss and present you today, just that you get a sense about the diversity of approaches that we're taking within this project. So on the one hand, we have developed different tools at the global level to try to address meaningful questions about the water-food-energy nexus at that scale. But also, of course, most of the decision making when it comes to the development of integrated approaches, of course, occurs at national and subnational level, and also at the basin scale level when it comes to water as well. So for that purpose, we have also put efforts in developing these basin tools. The type of modeling tools that we have developed, we have been experimenting with developing different type of modeling approaches. Some of them are fully integrated, and some of them are more modular, and they can be plugged in and plugged out depending on the problem at stake. And very importantly as well, the tools, when we talk about tools, we are not just talking here about modeling tools, but we are also talking about policy tools to bring in also this practical knowledge that stakeholders and decision makers have. On the global side, this is the modeling framework that is being currently developed at IIASA, and as part of this project, significant efforts have been dedicated to improve the representation of these three models, which is an agroeconomic land use model, GLOBIOM, hydrological model, water community model, and then the economic energy model and message. And as a result of that, there has been many type of different assessments, for instance, looking at the future investments that are needed to achieve a specific SDG targets. We are here presenting the example of the SDG 6 and how will those investments look like, and the portfolio of investments also needed if this target is to be achieved together with ambitious climate objectives. But beyond this kind of more technical analysis, we have also tried to build efforts in developing tools which are more user-friendly and that they can be used by stakeholders to also try to learn more in a spatially explicit manner, and this information can be displayed and summarized at country level or at basin level. What are the risks, the impacts, and the vulnerabilities that are arising from different development pathways and climate change when it comes to water, food, energy, nexus. And my colleague Ed Byers will give you a much more detailed tour. The other very important component of this project was the development of regional tools, basin tools in this case. We chose to work with two regions which are facing different but nevertheless very complex development and environmental challenges, and we have tried to bring in and to co-develop together with the stakeholders different approaches that can help these basins envisioning long-term solutions to jointly address these resources. So the overall approach, as I was stressing before, is not just relying on the use of advanced integrated modeling frameworks that are fit for purpose for these specific basins, but this in combination as well with policy tools. And these policy tools have been incredibly useful to build this understanding about what is the overall picture, the systemic picture about the basin in terms of what are the different challenges across sectors and basins, and more importantly also to try to co-develop with the stakeholders as well what are potential pathways to sustainable futures. Some key features that I would like to highlight about the participatory tools, although they will be described now much more in detail, is that I think on the one hand, they have been very helpful to try to develop and enhance institutional capacities about nexus management, and at the same time they have been also very beneficial to integrate all this practical knowledge that the stakeholders and decision makers have into the modeling exercise. There are two versions that have been developed. The ones that have been implemented in the basins were physical, so there were exercises developed face-to-face, but COVID somehow has pushed us in the line to develop other kind of ways of engaging with the stakeholders, and we are now moving into an online format. And one important feature is that these are open source. As for the key modeling, the key aspects of the modeling framework, as I said, we have developed and tested different type of modeling approaches. Most of these models are open source, and we are significantly investing efforts in make those tools open source. And one important advantage is that they're not just able to capture the very specific challenges of the basin, but since they are also nested with global models, they can also integrate and represent the global trends. And with this, I would like to pass it on to my colleague Piotr, who will be giving you more details and more insights about the participatory approach that we developed as part of the ISWEL project, and some of these policy tools that I was briefly mentioning. So thank you very much, and over to you, Piotr.